What's up, guys? Welcome to another motorized bike project video. So last week we just wrapped up what was done to install the torque converter and everything with that, and I had mentioned that this week you would be seeing the exhaust modification and install, and hopefully if we have time we'll get to the front brake. If not, unfortunately we'll have to take on another week and another part, but hoping to get to the end here, or pretty close to it, with the next couple videos. So right now I'm going to show you the exhaust. So for starters, I've just pulled off my heat wrap, and I've got gloves on because I'm sick of having itchy hands every time I touch this stuff. So if you saw the first video, I think I kind of said it was optional, but I would definitely wear gloves if I were you. Okay, so we've got the wrap off, and I've got one bolt off, but I'm going to leave the second one on to hold this in place so I can mark out my bends and where I want those to be. So let me just grab a marker here, and what we're going to do is I'm going to mark the location of the bend, so roughly the center of where I want the bend to be, as well as in what direction. So I'm going to actually try to get this done with just one bend, and actually one additional step. I need to set my cover back on here to make sure I avoid my cover and don't get into that. So roughly what I want to do is halfway back, so let's say halfway from here to here is right about here. That's about where I want the bend to be, and I want it to come, well let's mark it first here. So that's where I want about the center of the bend to be. And then in addition to that, I'm going to mark 180 degrees from each other in what direction I want it to go. So I want it to come not straight down, but down and a little bit out. So if I wanted it straight down, I would mark it just directly parallel to the ground. But I actually want it to come down a little bit. So we're going to go down a little bit and mark it right about there. And this is really just a rough way of doing this. It's actually going to be about the second bend I've ever done on this new bender. So if you have a better idea or have seen a better way of doing this, definitely do that, because I don't know completely what I'm doing here. So okay, so I've got where I want the center of the bend, as well as roughly in what direction. And actually, I can see already I want to mark up from where parallel would be, not down. So I want to X out this lower mark I made and use the upper mark. Okay. Alright, we've got that marked. The last thing I need to do is cut off my old muffler, but I'm going to take it off the bike and over to the vise to do that. So we'll just unscrew this. And I can see that everything's covered in fiberglass dust. So it's definitely a good idea that I was wearing gloves. My gasket is stuck to the exhaust. I'm going to just leave it. I don't want to pull it off and risk breaking it, so we'll just leave that. And I'll take you over to the vise and cut off this old muffler. Got it chopped up there, and I'm going to grab my cut-off wheel.
When you're negotiating a deal, if you're ready to serve it, you're saying, but first is was
Alright, I got it cut off and ground down roughly flat, or square I should say, and then I just cleaned up the end with a wire wheel so it's ready for welding. Let's go bend it. And now we've got the bender set up. And one thing I've found, this is only the second or third time I've used this, is that you don't want to go by the size written on the die. So for example, and again, this is my second time, so don't take this very seriously, but just in my experience, the size here is 1/2 inch. This is a 1-inch pipe, and that's just a little bit small, obviously, but if I actually used a 1-inch die, it just crushes the pipe. And I'll show you what I did over here. These are the first 2 bends I ever did earlier this afternoon. This is, I think, 1.25 inch pipe, and I started with the 1-inch die. There's not an 1.25 inch die in this set, and this is what the 1-inch die did to the pipe. So then I stepped down to a 3/4 inch die, and we have a much nicer bend there, you can see. So for this pipe, it's a 1-inch pipe, and the 3/4 die is pretty close, but it's just a little big, so I'm going with the 1/2 inch die, and we'll see how it goes. I just got my exhaust, or my muffler, set on the end of there to see how that's going to look, but set that aside. And I'm hoping this pipe isn't too short to even fit into my bender here. It looks like it'll work. Okay, take 2. So, what I've run into is that this pipe is a little bit too short to fit into my bender, and so I'm going to try and add this piece of, what is this? 1/2 inch pipe. It's just like a 1/2 inch pipe nipple, and if I mark just with my finger where my bend is at, I want to bring this back a ways so it doesn't get in the way and cause it to kink. But this is just acting as an extension, so I've just marked how far in I want it to go, and we'll see how this goes. You guys will see it first if I mess this up. So here again is the top of our bend, and that's going to cause it to go down and a little bit out. So I'm just going to put that in at the 12 o'clock position. And I can't quite get that all the way centered in the bender, but we're just going to go as far as we can and see how it works. Alright, we'll tighten it up. I'm about 1 inch from where I want to be, but that'll be alright. Alright, here we go. This jack on the bender leaks, so I've got to stand off to the side. Just keeping a close eye on things. So far, so good. The pipe is being pinched just slightly down into that die, but I think that's better than crushing it, so we'll just keep going. Now I'm going to quit there and take it back to our bike and see how it looks so far. you can see kind of what we're ending up with here. Let's go back to the bike and take a look. Alright, here we are back at the bike. We're moving in the right direction. We got a ways to go though. And I may end up changing my mind and not bending it quite as far, just to avoid crushing the pipe. I want to be a little more gentle, so let's go out and bend a little more and be right back. Okay, I think I'm going to quit there. I don't want to overdo it and risk crushing the pipe, but here's what we ended up with. It's not exactly what I wanted originally, but since this couldn't fit all the way into the bender where I wanted it, this is what we've got. So you can see our bend coming down where before we would have been into the seat. Now we're going to be safely below it, and our exhaust is probably 3 inches from the gas tank. I should say 2 inches. So now all we've got left to do is to tack a little weld around our coupler and then rewrap everything in heat wrap. So let's get that going. I've got a car in the way over here by the welder, as you can see, so I'm going to have to do the weld off camera, kind of put a bunch of blankets around and be safe that way, but I'll get the weld done and then I'll bring it back once it's all done. Okay, just got the weld all finished up. Here's the coupler welded to the pipe. Not a professional weld by any means, but working on the floor and its flux core, and I tacked it to begin with and then finished it off, but got that all cleaned up. And now, as you can see, I've got the muffler on now, but if I wanted to, if I have the strength to, I've actually got it pretty tight. But if I wanted to, wow, trust me, I could unthread that and run it just like a straight pipe without a muffler. So, sorry I can't get it off. It's warm from being welded and I threaded it in tight, and now it's getting even tighter. So, thanks to those tapered pipe threads. Okay, let's, we've got our gasket on there if you remember. Let's go ahead and put this back up to the motor and see how it looks. Try and keep my gloves on as long as I can. I can still see this fiberglass all over the place, and I do not want to be itchy. Alright, I think I set that second nut around here somewhere. Now we'll just go ahead and get it bolted back up to the engine, and we'll see what our final product looks like. I think I'm going to run it just for a little while without the exhaust wrap on it. That way I can kind of see where the heat is transferring with this new muffler. So originally, if you remember, the pipe got hot about to the end of the bend. That's when it was just a straight pipe, and we were fine back here. And then I put that temporary muffler on, and it was roasting hot everywhere. Because there was such a blockage suddenly with that small muffler, that it was retaining a lot of the heat that was originally able to just escape from the straight pipe. So now with the better flow of this larger muffler, I just kind of am curious about how the heat is going to act. So we'll leave the exhaust wrap off and see how that goes, and then likely we'll rewrap it. A little bit of a tight fit getting to these nuts, but we'll get it. Okay. One thing I may do, they recommend adding a support for like a header setup this long, but I think I'm going to be okay. It's not a lot of extra weight back here. It's probably, I don't know, 8 ounces or so, half a pound, if that. It might even be 3 to 4 ounces, so I'm not too concerned about it. But let's see how it sounds. Give it a little choke. And sorry about that. Got a nice sound to it. It's a little deeper than it was with that old small muffler. And you can get a nice look here. Let me take you down just to see how it looks. I don't mind it. I wouldn't mind it being down a little bit more, kind of in line with the frame here, but I think it's going to be okay. So I'll go ahead and ride it around a little bit and see how it heats up. And likely I'll just rewrap it just as far as the muffler goes. I'd like to keep the muffler the way it is, and if I finish wrapping right here, I can easily remove that muffler. So that's what I've got for today. I will be back next week. I've run out of time for this week, but I'll be back next week with that front brake install, and I'll hopefully get into the sheet metal up there and the shield here and kind of my plans for finishing up the build. And hopefully in the next maybe 2 or 3 parts we will be done. So I think we're at part 9, 8 or 9 now. We'll try to keep it to about 10 or 11 parts. So thanks for watching. As always, I'll see you on the next video. Like and subscribe and comment if you have any questions. Thanks a lot.